The Recovery Couch is made possible by the generous support of our sponsors. A special thank you to Greg Swartz at Remax Victory and Affiliates. Greg is more than just a real estate expert. He's a leader in our community who believes in helping people find their way home, both in life and in faith. If you're looking to buy or sell, connect with Greg and experience the integrity and service that he gives. We're also proudly sponsored by JB Davis at South Dayton Toyota, where community commitment and care come standard. JB and his team don't just sell cars, they support local voices that help inspire change. Together, these partners make it possible for us to keep sharing stories of redemption, resiliency, and recovery. The Recovery Couch is a true story media production, reminding you that every story matters and healing begins when we speak out loud. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Recovery Couch. I'm your host, Brandon Couch. And today we're going to start a new series called Learning Together, where we go through this huge book that is a review preparation manual for drug and alcohol credentialing exams. And we're not going through it because we're taking an exam. We're going to go through it in order to learn statistically, biologically, anatomically, what is really going on with drugs and alcohol in this world. So let's start in section 1, chapter 1, an overview of addiction and its treatment. Starts by saying almost everyone has had experience with addictive psychoactive substances. Almost everyone. Alcohol is a legal substance that is frequently used in social situations by people from all walks of life. Most common substance used is alcohol. Most people consume it occasionally and experience no adverse effects. Nevertheless, it can be addicting. And for those who reach the addiction level of use, there are potential health and social consequences. In addition to alcohol, mood-altering drugs include a variety of illegal and legal substances that are highly addictive. I know because I have been on some of these substances and I became addicted. This often results in impaired physical, social, and psychological functioning of users. The most recent National Survey on Drug Use and Health reports some of the following findings among people aged 12 years old or older. This is in 2021. This study was completed in 2021, so 4 years old. The study's 4 years old, and we're looking at people 12 years old or older in this study. 57.8%, substantially over half, have either used tobacco, alcohol, or an illicit drug in the past month. Which the past month, if you've used any of those in the past month, that is what defines you as a current user. So if you're wondering, okay, well, what differentiates a past user from a current user? It's if you've used in the past month, you're a current user, according to the examination guidelines. In 2021, marijuana was the most commonly used illicit drug, with 18.7% of people aged 12 years old or older using it in the past year. So the sample size is greater. We're not going from only current users, which is defined as in the past month. We're going from in the past year, most 19% of people aged 12 years old or older have used marijuana when this study was taken. Among people aged 12 years old or older in 2021, 3.3%, which equals 9.2 million people. So the percentage is small, but the number is great. Among people aged 12 years old or older, 3.3% misused opioids, heroin, or prescription pain relievers within the past year. So as we see, diving into this book, the use of psychoactive substances, anywhere from tobacco to narcotics and everything in between, marijuana, alcohol, everything in between, are commonly used. For those of you who are in active drug addiction, that should tell you that you are not alone. You unfortunately, like I did, we reached the level of addicted. where some people in these statistics only get to the level of social use. And I guess what that's telling me is everybody's only one use away from teetering that line. If you're able to drink socially, I go to one happy hour a week. You're a second happy hour a week from going to social drinker to addicted. And I'm not saying that to scare the one happy hour a weeker. I'm saying that more because, man, my heart goes out to these people who ended up going to that second happy hour, ended up getting that prescription refilled, and ended up becoming dependent and then addicted. And I'm just trying to create an illustration of like, this is how close we all can be, have been, or are to being in the bowels of addiction. In the 2021 NSDUH, let's figure out what that means. NSDUH. It's got to be some sort of national survey on drug use and health. So these are the survey. This is the survey that was taken in 2021. In this survey, the presence of substance use disorder, which is the clinical term when you go into a treatment center, that's the clinical term for addict, is substance use disorder, or SUD is what you often hear it referred to as. The presence of substance use disorder in the past year was assessed based on criteria specified in the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, the 5th edition, the DSM-5. So if let's pause here. So the DSM-5 is going to be the handbook that therapists, counselors who are assessing somebody who has substance use disorder, the DSM-5 is going to be the book where they reference their clients' behaviors before they can give them a diagnosis. So if a client comes into their counselor at a substance abuse treatment center and says, I get anxious in social situations, so I isolate and I like to lay under my covers, the counselor is going to go into the DSM-5. They're going to look and say isolation, anxious in social situations. They're going to see where they're probably going to diagnose them with anxiety and depression, but they have to go into the DSM-5 to make sure that the symptoms are equivalent to the diagnosis. That's the DSM-5. In 2021, the percentage of people aged 12 years old or older with a substance use disorder was the highest among young adults aged 18 to 25. So 25% of people, when this study was done, aged 12 years old or older, 25% of those were aged 18 to 25. I think that what that's telling us is substances are getting to that age group, by and large, per capita, greater than any other age group. So to any 18 and 25-year-olds out there, be wary, be cautious. Here's an interesting statistic. Among the 40.7 million people aged 12 years old or older in 2021 with an illicit drug or alcohol use disorder in the past year who did not receive treatment at a specialty facility, 96.8%, which equals almost 40 million people, did not feel they needed treatment. That's our ego. I was that person at one point in time. I had an entire intervention done on me with friends and family. It was huge. It was a big one. And I did not think that I needed treatment. I mean, deep down, I knew it, but I share that because I'm sitting here thinking, man, I'm not in the minority. I mean, none of us think that, I don't want to say none of us, many of us think that we don't have a problem when we do. To that point, the book tells us that treatment is vital for those who use alcohol and other drugs as progress to the stage of dependence or addiction. Let's stop there. What is the difference between dependence and addiction? Let's get the actual definition. So this is based off a quick Google search. Dependence occurs when the body physically relies on a drug. So your body's physically relying on it. And addiction involves changes in behavior. A person with an addiction has difficulty not using substances or doing rewarding activities, even if it's harming them. A person can have an addiction without necessarily having a physical dependence. Similarly, a person can have a physical dependence on a drug without feeling compelled to use it. However, They may still experience withdrawal symptoms if they stop taking it. So I guess my understanding of this has been wrong for quite some time. I thought in dependence, you couldn't have a physical withdrawal symptoms, but according to Medical News Today, it's saying that in both dependence stage and the addiction stage, there can be withdrawal. So treatment is vital for those who use alcohol and other drugs that have progressed to the stage of dependence and addiction. This chapter will present a description of the 5 critical elements necessary for a comprehensive treatment approach. So stage 1 of addiction, experimental and social use of drugs and alcohol. The frequency in this stage is occasional, perhaps a few times monthly, usually on weekends, when at parties or with friends, and sometimes maybe using alone. The sources are friends and peers primarily, or a youth whose parents may have alcohol in their liquor cabinet. The reasons for use in this stage are to satisfy curiosity, to appease peer pressure. Is that how you say that? Appease? Never heard that word. To obtain social acceptance, to defy parental limits, to take a risk or seek a thrill, to appear grown up, to relieve boredom, to produce pleasurable feelings, and to diminish inhibitions in social situations, which is an interesting one because I think most drugs, in my experience, most drugs and alcohol were used by me and my peers to diminish inhibitions in social situations. The effects at this stage, the person will experience euphoria and return to normal state after using. A small amount may cause intoxication, and feelings sought include fun, excitement, thrill, belonging, and control. Behavioral indicators, little noticeable change, and some may lie about the use or the whereabouts of where they got it. Some may experience moderate hangovers. Occasionally, there's evidence of use, such as a beer can or some marijuana. It goes on to tell us the metabolic effects of alcohol and other drugs after the individual's chemistry alter the individual's chemistry because psychoactive drugs mimic, displace, block, or deplete specific chemical messengers between nerve cells in the brain. So this is where it's getting into neurologically what's going on that causes the euphoria after we use substances, after we use drugs or alcohol. Why do we all of a sudden feel good when I smoke a joint? Why do I all of a sudden feel good after I have 3 beers? Why do I all of a sudden feel different after I do 2 shots of whiskey? Why do I all of a sudden feel different after I pop a pill? And it's because the psychoactive drugs mimic, displace. So take away one feeling and replace it with another. Take away the anxiety. You have anxiety. You take a Xanax. That Xanax goes into the brain, binds to receptors in your brain, takes away the anxiety, and replaces it with euphoria. It can also block or deplete specific chemical messengers between nerve cells in the brain. Psychoactive substances act upon the same areas of the brain, and they can produce euphoria, an extremely pleasurable feeling, or cravings for the drug, an unpleasant feeling. So what that's telling us is, for one, if you have ever been prescribed a medication that you enjoyed, well, that's because that's what it was designed to do. You're not weird. You're not born with some unique ability to want drugs more than the other person. That's how these things are designed to provide euphoria. And that's the scary part about parents with children who come up in such a broken world where we don't want them to get on drugs. Like my parents didn't want me to be on drugs. It's because the truth is we know that drugs and alcohol provide a euphoric feeling. If they try it, they're probably going to like it. And that goes for anybody. And that's what gets scary, is because it's where the term chasing the dragon comes from. If you like it the first time, you're going to seek it a bunch of times. And I think that's where the old saying in AA comes from, where it says 1 is too many and 1,000's never enough. So these substances are having an effect on our brain. They're providing euphoria. But on the back end, that's on the front end. You take it, boom, euphoric. And then however long, whatever substance you used, alcohol, euphoric for a couple hours. Marijuana, euphoric for a couple hours. Pain pills, anxiety pills, euphoric for a couple hours. Notice everything's just for a couple of hours. And then your brain starts to experience a craving for the drug, which is an unpleasant feeling. And then if you gradually increase the use of the substance, the cycle of euphoria and cravings is what eventually results in dependence or addiction to the drug. It's that first use. Now, there are people out there who know how to shut that off. But there's a lot more people who accidentally, their brain just tricks them. I want it. I don't want to feel this craving anymore. I would rather feel that euphoria. That was me and so many other people I know. If you go back to chasing the craving and you replenish or displace that craving feeling with the feeling of euphoria, if you continue to use, then problem use or abuse of alcohol or other drugs becomes the second stage in the process of addiction. The frequency of administration as well as the amount of the drug increases. People then use to the point of intoxication. The pleasurable euphoric feelings produced with earlier use are still sought, but after the effects of the drug subside, pain, depression, and discomfort may occur. So for any of you who were stuck on that pleasurable feeling that I was talking about earlier, and you're thinking like, man, does it really, would I really like it? That's what they're designed for. It's not me encouraging you to do it. That's what these drugs were designed for. Some of them have serious health benefits and major injury, sickness type of situations. But if you get to this point where you're using it to get intoxicated, you're likely to begin encountering consequences after every use. The consequences may include work or school-related difficulties, changes in friends, family problems, physical illnesses, weight loss, and other physical problems, financial and legal complications, and personality and emotional changes. So what does the abuse stage look like? Well, the frequency of use increases to several times per week. You may begin to use during the day, and you may be using alone rather than with friends. The sources can still be friends, but you'll begin to buy enough to be prepared to use without them. And you may even sell drugs to keep a supply for personal use. Some begin stealing to have money to buy drugs and alcohol. The reasons for use change. You begin to use to manipulate your emotions, to experience the pleasure that the substances produce, to cope with stress and uncomfortable feelings such as pain, guilt, and anxiety, and sadness. And you use to overcome feelings of inadequacy, which, let's be honest, most of us feel inadequate. Let's be honest, man. Come on, man. That's a common feeling. It's a common feeling. Persons who use at this stage, the addiction stage, progress to this stage of drug alcohol involvement because of experiences with depression or other uncomfortable feelings. At this stage, substances are used to stay high or at least maintain normal feelings. And by normal feelings, we're not talking about sober normal feelings here. We're talking about euphoric normal feelings. You want to stay at that level of euphoria. And the unfortunate truth is you can't. Nobody can. You're going to run out of money. You're going to end up in jail. You're going to get a DUI. There's too many laws and legalities and rules, and your behaviors change so much. There's so much in place to where it's you can't do it. One's too many. 1,000 is never enough. The effects. Euphoria is the desired feeling, and they may return to a normal state following use, or they may experience pain, depression, and general discomfort. So intoxication begins to occur regularly. However, the feelings that are sought include pleasure, relief from negative feelings such as boredom and anxiety, and stress reduction. User may begin to feel some guilt, fear, and shame, which are all lies of the enemy. And, oh man, my friends, so often people in recovery relapse because of the guilt and the shame. I had a really wise man, somebody who I love dearly, talk to me about guilt and shame and how they are tools that the enemy uses to help us, or to trick us, not help us, to trick us into believing that we're not worthy of recovery. We're not worthy of a good life. I've stolen too much. I'll never, be a good member of society. I've slept around too much, I'll never be able to have a healthy relationship. I've used too many drugs. Society will never see me as an equal. These are all lies that, you know, the devil tries to tell us to keep us in a cycle where he wants us. And that's not where we belong. The user may even have suicidal ideations or worst case scenario attempts. They try to control their use, but it is unsuccessful. The feelings of shame and guilt are going to be your number one enemies in this process of recovery, guys. More of a substance is needed to produce the same effect. The behavioral indicators, so switching from the effects to the behavioral indicators, school and work performance and attendance may decline. You have mood swings, changes in personality, lying and conning, changes in friendships. You go from the friends you grew up with to drug using friends. And let's talk about that for a second. Man, I look back and I'm like, man, the friends I used drugs with, really, when the drugs ran out, man, it wasn't like we were real friends at that point. We weren't sitting there having heart-to-heart conversations when the drugs ran out. Tend to get annoyed with each other, start looking at each other funny, thinking I shouldn't be hanging out with them. They're thinking the same shit back. I shouldn't be hanging out with them. Crazy. More behavioral indicators include a decrease in extracurricular activities. Users begin adopting drug culture appearance, clothing, grooming, hairstyles, jewelry. Conflict with family members may be exacerbated. Behavior may be more rebellious, and all interest is focused on producing and using drugs and alcohol. If substance abuse continues, the individual may reach the stage of dependency/addiction. So we went from stage 1, experimental or social use, to stage 2, abuse, to now we're going to stage 3. Dependency occurs when a drug user experiences physical or psychological distress upon discontinuing use of drug. Addiction implies compulsive use. So we answered this question earlier, but this is a more descriptive answer on what is the difference between dependency and addiction. Dependency occurs when a drug user experiences physical or psychological distress upon discontinuing use of the drug. Addiction implies compulsive use, impaired control over using the substance, preoccupation with obtaining and using the drug, and continued use despite adverse consequences. So they provide a table here, which is stage 3, dependency/addiction stage, where they define the frequency of use as daily and continuous. The sources of the drugs, the user will use any means necessary to obtain and secure needed drugs, alcohol. The user will take serious risks, and the user will often engage in criminal behavior such as shoplifting and burglary. Now, since I've been in this stage of addiction, I know that many addicts like myself, I'm a former addict, but when an active addiction, many people will justify their shoplifting and burglary by saying they're so gangster, they take what they want. I take what I want. Even though I've been in recovery for quite some time, and I know once we get in the recovery treatment centers and we're sitting in counseling rooms and group discussions, these behaviors are the ones that make us slouch in our seat and make us have a hard time kind of looking back at like our behaviors and what we were doing while we were in the throes of addiction. In the dependency addiction stage, the reasons for use include drugs and alcohol are needed at this point to avoid any pain or depression. Another reason is many wish to escape the realities of daily living. To be more specific, I don't want to even think about what I did yesterday, who I slept with, what I stole. So I'm going to get as high as I can today to try to erase that from my memory, escaping the realities of daily living. And then another reason for use is that they understand their use is out of control. The effects in this stage, person's normal state is pain or discomfort. So in the first stage, experimental stage, we were using to lower our inhibitions. We were using to try to be cool around our friends. At this stage, our normal state is pain and discomfort, and we're trying to escape it. The drugs and alcohol help us feel normal in this stage. When the effects wear off, the user feels pain. The user is unlikely to experience euphoria in this state. So even though they're using drugs or alcohol, they're not feeling the euphoric feeling that we discussed earlier. They're just feeling normal. They may experience suicidal thoughts or even attempts. They often feel guilt and shame and remorse. The biggest tools that the enemy uses, he starts using them double time in this stage of addiction. They may experience blackouts and they may experience changing emotions such as depression, aggression, or irritation and apathy. The behavioral indicators include physical deterioration, weight loss, health problems, appearance is poor, memory loss, flashbacks, paranoia, volatile mood swings, and other mental problems. Maybe they even drop out or are expelled from their school, or they lose their job, may be absent from their home much of the time, which sadly was many of these applied in my case. There's possible overdoses and lack of concern about being caught, focused only on procuring and using drugs and alcohol. This is a serious stage, my friends, a stage I've been in. I've been in every one of these stages. For those of you listening, I've been in every one of them. Even the fourth and the fifth that we haven't got to yet. So this book goes on to tell us that the latest edition of the DSM-5, we talked about that earlier, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, that's where they diagnose mental disorder, substance abuse disorder, which was published in May of 2013, has removed the distinction between abuse and dependence. So we've had a lot of discussion on that today. The terminology now being used identifies two groups of substance use-related disorders: substance use disorders and substance-induced disorders. Substance use disorders are patterns of symptoms resulting from use of a substance which the individual continues to take despite experiencing problems. As a result, substance-induced disorders include intoxication, withdrawal, substance-induced mental disorders, including substance-induced psychosis, substance-induced bipolar and related disorders, substance-induced obsessive-compulsive and related disorders, substance-induced sleep disorders, substance-induced sexual dysfunctions, substance-induced delirium, and substance-induced neurocognitive disorders. So substances can induce a myriad of mental health issues and physical issues and sexual issues. Substance use disorders span a wide variety of problems arising from substance use and cover 11 different criteria. Here's the criteria. 1, taking the substance in larger amounts or for longer than you meant to take it. 2, wanting to cut down or stop using the substance, but not managing to. 3, spending a lot of time getting, using, or recovering from use of the substance. 4, cravings and urges to the substance. 5, not managing to do what you should at work or home or school because of substance use. 6, continuing to use even when it causes problems in relationships. 7, giving up important social, occupational, or recreational activities because of substance use. 8, using substances again and again, even when it puts you in danger. 9, continuing to use even when you know you have a physical or psychological problem that could have been caused or made worse by the substance. 10, needing more of the substance to get the effect you want, aka tolerance. 11, development of withdrawal symptoms, which can be relieved by taking more of the substance. The DSM-5 allows clinicians and even yourself, if you buy yourself a DSM-5, it allows the clinicians and the ability to specify how severe the substance use disorder is. So there's levels of substance abuse disorder. It's not just you have substance abuse disorder. There's 2 or 3 different levels to substance abuse disorder. So 2 or 3 symptoms indicate a mild substance use disorder. 4 or 5 symptoms indicate a moderate substance use disorder, and 6 or more symptoms indicate a severe substance use disorder. Clinicians can also add that the patient is in early remission and sustained remission or on maintenance therapy. So that is what we're going to cover for this episode of Learning Together. Next, we're going to get into recovery and some critical components for effective treatment. Hope you learned a lot today. I know I did. I look forward to continuing this mission with you guys. Don't forget to go check out our Patreon page and join the Recovery Couch Inner Circle, where there's all sorts of bonus content. Also, my book, Step 4, A Journey Through Addiction, is out now. I will leave a link to get a copy in the show notes or in the comments. I'll leave it somewhere. If you're really interested, go buy a copy. This is going to discuss how I was in every single stage of the addiction stages that we just discussed. This is going to tell you my whole story in active addiction. And I've got great reviews on it so far. You can see some of the reviews on Goodreads or Amazon. And I think this could really benefit anybody out there who needs to understand what is addiction really like and how serious it can get. And how, even more importantly, there is hope for redemption and recovery. So until next time, please remember you always have a seat right here on the Recovery Couch.